Hello, hello, and welcome to another episode on the Everyday Joy podcast. Hey, don't forget to share this podcast with your friends and with your family, especially if there's a topic that you think would really resonate with them. And on that note, one of the ways we can grow this podcast and have more people discover everyday joy is by you leaving a 5-star written review. It really does help spread the word. Right now, though, let's get into today's Bible verse.
Jesus said, "Don't hoard treasure down here where it gets eaten by moths and corroded by rust, or worse, stolen by burglars. Stockpile treasure in heaven where it's safe from moth and rust and burglars." That's from Matthew chapter 6, verse 19 to 20, the Message version.
I've got Jen here in studio. Hello, Jen.
Hello, how you going?
I'm good. You know, every time I think of moths, I think of mothballs, and I think of this incident when I was 3 years old, and I love the smell of mothballs to this day. But when I was 3, I couldn't differentiate between a nice smell and something that's toxic to eat.
Oh, no.
So I downed 3 or 4 mothballs, and my mum found me literally frothing on the floor. I think I had just eaten them, and they called up the ambulance, and they had just moved to New Zealand at the time. So they didn't know the emergency number. And so Dad was frantically looking through the yellow pages back then, and he found the emergency number, and he called them up, and then he said, my daughter's swallowed some naphthalene balls, which is what they call them in India. That's the actual word for them. Naphthalene balls, that's a key ingredient or whatever. And they hung up because they actually thought it was some kind of joke, because obviously there weren't many Indians in New Zealand at the time. The phrase naphthalene balls might sound a little strange in an Indian accent, and they just thought it was a prank call, and so they hung up. And so Dad had to call back again. Finally, they got through. They understood what Dad was trying to say, and they sent an ambulance over, and obviously I'm all good now, but that is my first impression.
Oh, wow. That's such an intense first impressions.
Yeah. I've got other first impressions, but I think for me and for my mum and for my dad, when we think moths, we think mothballs, we think Joy almost died.
Oh.
There we go. What about you?
I'm glad he didn't die. I'm glad you're here speaking to me today. Well, with mine, I think mine's more of the biblical side of it instead of your story.
No, that's good. We need to go there eventually.
Well, it's telling me that I don't need to depend on the material things and the physical things on earth. And it reminds me that, my true heart should be on heaven. That's where I'm safe.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's the idea of this verse is it really tells us to not stockpile and treasure the things that are going to fade away, that won't be there 10, 15, 200 years from now. So I think that's a really good point. We're going to be diving into that a little bit later with your story, Jen. But first, what does this verse tell you about who God is or what matters to him?
I can see that God values our heart, and he's reminding us to not focus on earthly things, on things, physical things here on earth, and to not get lost in it, because it's so incredibly easy to get lost in earth things.
And you've got a real story about this because you and I think we have been moving around the same time. Now, when I moved to Melbourne, I moved with 2 suitcases. And somehow, when I was moving houses, I'm like, how do I have so much stuff? I had accumulated so much, and I didn't realize I was. And you had a similar experience, or having a similar experience.
Yes, I feel like it's my life situation right now.
Okay, so it's real and it's now.
It's right now. We're living in the moment and we're sharing the moment. So I've moved maybe 4 times now, and this is probably the worst because I'm moving with a cat and a toddler. And those 2, they love boxes. They love pulling things out of boxes. They like being in boxes. They are a box. I think I am a box now. And so my life is surrounded by boxes, and I'm going through all of these stuff that I have. And I'm sitting there going, how did I have so much? Where has this all come from? And like yourself, you're like, wow, I've really bought a lot of stuff. And so I've had a lot of meltdowns going through my perfect dresses, because a lot of my dresses have that memory with it. I remember where I wore it, the fun I had with it. It's those pretty dresses that I'm like, oh, I remember twirling around, or I was falling in love with Kev. And so I've been really sad opening these boxes and looking at these beautiful memories. But then this verse keeps coming on my head. I know that's when God's telling me something. God's like, remember this.
Facebook Marketplace.
I'm going to cry the day I have to do that. But I know I have to. There's literally 4 boxes of donations or things I need to sell. But I need to remember that these are things that are just on earth.
Yeah. A little bit of a segue. How many of the things you're planning to donate have you never used, or you haven't used as much as you could have? Like dresses that you're like, I could have totally worn them more often, or, fine china that you never used, those sorts of things.
I probably used maybe 1% of it I haven't used.
Right,
they are still brand new.
Okay.
Most of it, I love clothes. So I'm always wearing different types of clothes.
Yeah.
So at least I know they've had somewhere of it. There's probably maybe 10 dresses that I can actually say 10 dresses that I've only worn once.
You know what you should do, Jen? Before you stick them on Marketplace or you donate them, wear the dress again. Just wear it. I think this is a thing that I think about this verse. There's 2 sides to it. First of all, we as humans, I think, tend to accumulate a lot of things. And if you're listening right now, you can probably relate to this. That's something we do, something we need to manage. But I think there's another part of it, which is we accumulate a lot of things we don't actually use. Or things we save to use for a particular occasion. And we kind of leave it there on the top shelf thinking, I'll get round to using that when it's this, when it's that. For example, we've got this beautiful serving set that we got as one of our wedding gifts. And it's so special and it's so beautiful. And it's just sat there, Jen.
No.
For a year now. We're coming up to our first anniversary and I haven't touched it because I'm just like, I'm going to save that for a special occasion. And then every time those, quote, special occasions come around, I'm too frantic planning the event. I've got so much going on in my mind. I forget about this thing. I've got dresses that I bought that I have never worn because I'm waiting for the right occasion to wear it. And I think one thing I just really want to focus on today, because we've talked previously on this podcast about focusing and stockpiling things that are worthy of stockpiling, things like generosity, things like kindness, things like good relationships. But I think today I want to go down a practical route, which I think is something we all can relate to. This idea of wearing the dress.
Yes.
Wear the thing. Use the thing, whatever it is that you bought to save for a special occasion, use it today because today is a special day.
Yes.
Today is the day to use that new piece of technology. Today is the day to bring out the fancy camera. Today is the day. I feel like I'm touching on a lot of things here. But you probably would have had that feeling, Jen, when you went through all your boxes. You're like, oh my goodness, I should have used this.
Yeah. Yep. And I'm going to use it now. Thanks for the hype up. And I hope whoever's listening now, you have the hype up as well. So I know this verse is telling us to stockpile in heaven, but let's enjoy the stuff that we have now that God has blessed us with.
Well, we have come to the end of today's episode. I'd highly encourage you to check out 2 things. Number 1, head to the Everyday Joy Facebook group where you can find an extended conversation, a reflection, a thought, or even just an incredible community who want to dive into the scripture further. Now, if you don't see a post on there, share a bit of your story. That's what the community is for. The link to that is in the description below. Today's episode honestly could not be possible without so many incredible thoughts and ideas and stories from real live people. And I hope that as you listen to today's episode, you can be reminded that in the same way God works in our stories and in our lives, He can work in your life as well. He is a God who cares about you and who loves you and who is there for you. I hope you feel the love today, and I hope you can head out into whatever situation you're facing with more courage, with more strength, and of course, more joy. Look forward to catching up again next time.